What is up, everyone? JD here. I hope you're all doing well today. Man, I have another blade battle for you guys today, and I'm excited about this one. I was looking at my Demco AD20.5, which has been in a couple of blade battles at this point on the channel, and I was looking at it thinking, you know what actually would be a very interesting comparison to that? That's going to be the Hogue Deka Wharncliffe. I think this is going to be a very interesting matchup, so let's go ahead and jump into it. We're going to be taking a look at the knife section by section, talking a little bit about each one and giving you my pick as to the winners. But don't forget, at the end, let me know down in the comment, which one would you take? Who would you pick? Which ones do you have, and why are you picking one over the other? So let's go ahead and jump into the steels first. On the Deka, you have a 3.25-inch Magna Cut blade. On the AD20.5, you have a 3.17-inch Austin A blade. I'm going to give this one to the Magna Cut blade, especially now that Hogue has corrected and adjusted their heat treat, getting it closer to that 63 mark. So I'm giving that edge in steel to the Deka. Now, depending on what you want out of the knife, if you prefer something that's a little bit more thin and slicey, definitely going to give that to the Hogue. If you like something a little slicey, but also capable of doing much more heavy duty work, going to give that one to the AD20.5. So again, depending on your needs, I, in this instance, am going with the AD20.5 because I do like the fact that it is slicey, but robust enough to be able to do more hard use, heavy duty work. Also because I like the simple flat grind on it as opposed to the compound grind, which really, it doesn't have an acute point here. It really doesn't make sense to me for this Wharncliffe. I'm sure someone out there is going to correct me in the comments and let me know why it is better to have the slicey tip out on the edge and the thickness in here. You can say that it's going to be to use it to push cut through this, but it's so slicey that I think you could have gone that same thickness all the way throughout and had it be nice and tall, taking it all the way up to the thumb studs. So I am just going to go with the shark's foot blade, as Demco does call their knife. I do like it. You get a lot more cutting edge on the Hogue though, so keep that in mind. So you get a lot more cutting edge. It's a huge difference, even though when you're talking about a 3.25 versus a 3.17, doesn't seem like it, but it really is quite a difference there. Now, the edges from the factory on both of these knives and the heat treats, now that they've been corrected on both these knives, really good. I've seen Brian from Transparent Knives talk about this being at 60.5, which is a high heat treat for an Austin A blade. It's going to perform somewhere around 14C28N, Nitro V, 154 cm, somewhere around there. Your Magna Cut is going to be more like your S35, S45 VN, so you're going to get better edge retention, a little bit easier to sharpen. Corrosion resistance might have a little bit of an edge with the Austin A, but the Magna Cut I think is really good as well. It could even be the same for all I know, but I know that it's not a concern as far as the corrosion is concerned. I think I like the look too aesthetically on the blade. I don't usually get into that, but I just really like the look of the shark's foot. I wish it was a little bit longer, but I think because of how they designed the backspacer, they could have just stopped it. But I think with the clip point, they kind of need that there to protect you from touching the tip inadvertently. But if they could have made it a little bit longer, that would have been the only thing that I would have asked for. Now, in this version, I did pay more for the Magna Cut with the marble carbon fiber. With the Scorpion is what they call this edition or this run of this particular knife. This is from Smoky Mountain Knife Work. So it is still a little bit more expensive with what I spent on the fat carbon with the cost of the knife in consideration. I would say I'm about $50 over the price of this knife from its standard form with the fat carbon on there. Now, I do feel like I have one of the better versions because I got this as their third run drop. This was dropped late by DLT. It had that the green Grivory on there, so I feel confident that I have the good heat treat on here, but I'm thinking that I'm probably going to see if I can get both of them tested just to see. and make sure. But it does feel like it, and I mean, Hogue came with a factory edge that's really good. The Demco 2 has a really nice laid back edge on it. Very slicey. They both perform very well. Now with the fat carbon and the carbon fiber, I feel like, you know, both of them are more slick than probably some of your other materials, but they feel lightweight and tacky and rigid enough to feel really good in hand, and it really does make a huge improvement when you replace the scales on the AD20.5. I feel like it takes it to an entirely different level. The factory clip is definitely going to go to the Deka. The Deka just has the better clip. It functions better. It's deep carry. The one that comes with the Demco AD20.5, just a very basic clip. It's not deep carry. It is tip up or tip down from the factory, so I'm going to give clip positions to the Demco AD20.5. And now we're going to move into the ergonomics. They're actually very similar. If you look at them, very, very similar. Where it changes out is back here on the edge. But if you look up here, it has a very similar ergonomic pattern until you get past the halfway point of the knife. And then they have different approaches. That different approach makes the Demco, for me, feel better in hand. I don't have anything going into the palm here. It feels a little bit like a little bit of a miss. With this one here, the way that it kind of locks in, it pushes right into the palm. So I feel like I have more to grab onto with the way that this one is designed versus the Deka. Now, that's not to say the Deka is bad. It's pretty good for being overall a little bit thinner in the back end of the knife than it is on the front end, but it still feels really good. Now, let's talk about the lock devices. I am just not even going to prolong this. This goes 100% to the AD20.5. The Shark Lock, just better, easier to operate, not as prone or susceptible to breaking. I did have my original clip point Deka have one of the springs break after about 7 months. I sent it in to Hogue, got it back within 2 weeks, so they took care of it. You can buy the aftermarket springs, which seem to be a little bit better made than the Benchmade ones, but I heard a rumor that Hogue had stepped up their Omega springs, and being that this one is a second gen, I'm kind of wondering that, because even though it is still really smooth, it does feel like they're a little bit stronger, like it takes just a little bit more finger strength to pull it back. But it has been a while since I've owned that Deka, so I am not 100% sure. Now, thumb studs, they're a little aggressive on the Deka, and I forget with the Deka, the way that this one, everything is on the very tip, so you put your thumb on top of the knife and flip it out, and it doesn't feel like it's as bitey as it does when you stick it on the tip versus coming in from the side like you do with most studs. I think the thumb studs on the Demco are a little bit more comfortable. They are like a cone shape, but they're flat up on the top, so you don't have that issue. As far as means of deployment, you got thumb studs. You also have the hole for the reverse flick. I think you can flick it open from there, but my thumb hits the stud, so I really feel like I'm just hitting the stud. I really just feel like that hole is just for reverse flicking the knife open, which it works really, really well, and it's such a smooth operation because this one's riding on bearings. The Deka is running on phosphor bronze washers, so less susceptible to dirt, but it is really so tight down in here. And I have the Rocket Glides on here, but it's so tight in here, I don't know that dirt is going to get in there too easily. Very fine pieces of dirt are going to get in there. You're not really going to get anything down in here. You can see it is sandwiched, so there's nothing that's going to get between the liner and the blade in between those washers. It's very, very, very tight fit. Ease of maintenance is one thing that I don't talk about on the blade battles as much as I should. It is easier to disassemble and maintenance this knife because you have the ability to pull off the scale, the liner, and get to it. The Deka, if you want to take it completely apart to clean it, is going to be a little bit harder than it is if you just want to take out the pivot bolt and pull the parts out and clean it that way. But there is a tool from Flytanium, the pivot tool that they made for the bug outs, that do actually also fit and work fairly well with the Deka, that allows you to kind of center everything up and pull the pivot through while you're using that tool. I really like that tool a lot. Both USA made in Taiwan. So neither of them are Chinese made knives, but I would say, a little bit of an edge to US manufacturing at that price point. I think the base Deka with 20 CV, which is still a fantastic blade steel, comparable to M390, you can get it for under 150. You're paying for AUS-10A made in Taiwan. You're getting the Shark Lock, which I understand it's a more expensive way to manufacture or something, but you're getting 100% lockup on the blade with either one of these locks. That's pretty competitive, but if I had to pick one that was going to win this battle and was going to end up in my pocket on the regular, it's going to be the AD20.5. In this configuration, if you're talking about the G10 variant versus the Grivory variant, I'm probably actually going to lead towards the Deka because that G10 variant feels very nice. It has bi-directional pattern milled into the G10, which makes it feel very ergonomic and very nice, whereas the Demco with the Grivory overlay scales just feels a little cheap. Having said that, these are the upgraded versions, and it's roughly about a $50 difference if you don't include the pocket clip. I'm going with the AD20.5 because overall I enjoy the ergonomics. The AUS-10A performs very well for EDC. Anything that I'm using my knife for, that AUS-10A is capable of handling. It has not failed. It is not rolled. That is still the factory edge. I've only had to strop it when I've used it. The coating really has surprised me on both these knives. I don't know if you can really tell through the camera. You can probably see a little bit of damage in here. Not damage. You can see a little bit of scarring in there from where I've used it. It hasn't pulled away yet. You definitely can see more here. You can tell where I've used it, cleaned it, used it, cleaned it. It's just got, it's all over the place with that one. But I'm just really surprised how much the coating had held up. I really expected it to be way worse by now, as much as I've used that Demco AD20.5. But again, picking the Demco AD20.5, I think it's just a slightly better looking knife. I like the grinds on it just a little bit more. I think the ergos are a little bit better. The Shark Lock, a little bit easier to operate, and I have a little more confidence in it. That's not to say the Deka is a bad knife. If you like something super slicey, this thing is really quite impressive. It's not very tall, but it's super slicey, so it goes through the material really well. And it does on phosphor bronze washers, it actuates really, really well. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten it to quite, I'm trying to do it on camera, quite break into where it can kind of fall down, but I have not done my disassembly yet either. I've found on disassembly you can strop up the phosphor bronze washers just a little bit. You don't want to take too much material or anything away, and then oiling them up, put them back together. Man, it's like night and day, huge difference. It gets super duper fall shut, but that blade is so lightweight, it doesn't have the weight to carry momentum into a drop shot action. Who would you have picked? I'd love to hear. Let me know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's blade battle, do me a favor, leave a like. I'd really appreciate it. And if you're enjoying the content, consider subscribing to the channel if you're not already subscribed. If you are a subscriber, thank you for your continued support and the comments. I really appreciate it. It helps me grow the channel. Thanks for all the support. Seriously, I do appreciate it. I hope all of you have a fantastic week, and until next time, peace.